Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Men's ADHD Support Group. Tonight, we're going to be talking to Alex High of Reset ADHD. He's going to be going over rejection sensitivity, emotional dysregulation, and resilience. He's going to talk about his story and, how he got to where he is today and what we can do about these different issues that we deal with as men. And I really want everyone to take your time and, think about questions that you may have to ask, think about things that you want to understand. And after he gets done with his presentation, we'll do a Q&A. I've got some questions from the group that we built up earlier this week from a lot of the really great content that we have in our Men's ADHD support group. So, you know, I just really want everybody to understand, like, rejection sensitivity and emotional dysregulation is just such a big aspect. And I know Alex is going to talk about this, but it's just not as well understood as it really needs to be. And I really hope that everybody takes away from this lessons that you can use in your life. And I hope they can really help with some healing and getting the support and love and care that we all deserve and need. So that being said, Alex, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to let you take it away now, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. As Shane said, my name is Alex High. Thank you for being here. I know it's Friday evening, so I appreciate your time. So let's dive into it. I'm an author, founder of the business Reset ADHD. I'm an ADHD coach. We also have content, online courses, videos, that sort of thing, blog. I'm also a feeler, so I have emotions, although I try and deny it sometimes. And then I have ADHD myself. So this is very real for me, this topic. Do want to throw out this little warning here. We're going to be talking about some big issues, sometimes some scary issues, because emotions can be scary at times. So do what you need to do to take care of yourself as we go through this presentation. If you need to take a break, take a break. If you need to just stop, stop. I won't be offended, but do take care of yourself. And I'm just throwing that out there before we get started. So kind of where we're going tonight is we're going to start by talking about emotions and ADHD, kind of talking about that aspect of it. Again, we're going to be brief and just touch the tip of the iceberg. And then we're going to get into rejection sensitivity, which I think is kind of the main draw of this presentation because it's a big topic in the ADHD world, and probably rightfully so. And we'll talk about my experience with rejection sensitive dysphoria. And then we'll get into kind of resilience, perseverance, that sort of stuff that kind of helps us keep moving when we get into situations where we are emotionally challenged. And then we can also talk about some redirects, some mindset shifts that are helpful. And then I hope that we have a good discussion afterwards. I really want question and answer time to be fruitful. So that's probably where I hope to do the most talking. That's where I hope to dedicate the most time. So the first little bit will just be me kind of rambling, and then we'll get into some really good stuff. I like in these presentations when I have questions, they really shape the presentation and make it better than what I thought was necessary to bring up. So emotional regulation and ADHD. Emotional dysregulation is not in the diagnostic criteria for ADHD, but it should be. Lots of research studies have brought this up. They have talked about it, realized it. I've got one quote from a 2012 study that says, empirical studies have confirmed a high prevalence of this psychopathological feature, emotional dysregulation, in adults with ADHD that compares to the frequency of the ADHD core symptoms, inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. So what that's saying is emotional dysregulation is as prevalent in ADHD as inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. And if you think about it, that really makes sense because the ADHD brain is different. There are structural and functional differences in how the ADHD brain is wired. And emotions come from the brain. They're processed in the brain. Like, the brain is emotional. And so if the brain is shaped differently and works differently, it's going to experience emotions differently. Having said that, though, we experience all the same emotions neurotypicals do, but ours are just at like a different level. I have here on the slide, ADHD emotions are all in. So it's not just being a little bit angry, it's being a lot angry. And that can lead to overwhelm because emotions can impair our logical thinking and we get overwhelmed by the emotion and we don't make rational decisions. So that can lead to, you know, impulsive statements, impulsive actions that are not who we are. They're not in line with our core values and who we are as a person. So I have also listed just some basic emotions that could come up: anger, rejection, sensitivity, depression, anxiety. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So, and I really don't want to spend a lot of time on like the basics of emotion and ADHD because we all experience it. And if we want to later, we can get into how do we explain this to others. But for now, I think we'll move on and focus in on rejection sensitive dysphoria, which is a term coined by Dr. William Dodson. It's not an official diagnosis, but the anecdotal evidence is there that it's part of the ADHD experience. Dr. Dodson is considered one of the best ADHD experts out there. And he says like 98 or 99% of people with ADHD experience rejection sensitivity. So RSD, rejection sensitivity, is an extreme emotional reaction to real or perceived rejection. So it could be, yes, in dating, we got turned down for a date, or it could be our friend hasn't talked to us in a while and we perceive that as rejection. And that's really part of my story with rejection sensitivity. If I don't hear from a friend for a while, I start to wonder what I did to upset them, why they don't like me anymore, what it is about me, what's wrong with me. And really, they're probably just busy. They got busy with other things and forgot to check in with us or whatever. But me, and I'm sure some of you, take that personally. We make it about us when really it's not about us, it's about them. And then also with rejection sensitivity, I stay in relationships too long because I don't want to end a relationship and have to go find someone new. I get comfortable, if you will, in a relationship that's maybe not right for me. But I don't want to be rejected by other people. So I stay with this one person who I expect to stay with me. On the flip side of that, at the beginning of a relationship, I expect to get dumped. I expect to have them say, actually, could you stop talking to me? I'm not interested. And I get that anxiety, I guess you could call it, that sensitivity to rejection, just because that's kind of what I've experienced in my life. And that's what I'm afraid of, essentially. Now, the absolute height of my rejection sensitivity came on October 31st, 2018. It was the culmination of a very tough year. In the beginning of February, I got dumped, took that breakup really hard, and then eventually got over it, started dating someone new. And at the end of October, she broke up with me too. So I was lying there thinking about all that had happened that past year, 2 breakups. And on top of that, I had a friend die of cancer. I had a hospitalization in there, some health problems. And it was just a lot in 1 year. And so I was stuck there laying on my couch, just trying to cope with everything. But it was so hard for me to cope with it. And my brain said, I've got an idea for you that will help you get rid of the pain. And I didn't want to die. I didn't want to do anything like that, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. And thankfully, I reached out to a local mental health hospital, went in for an emergency mental health evaluation. They offered to hospitalize me, but they also said I could leave if I wanted to. I ended up just leaving and going to sleep at my mom's house because it was a place of comfort for me. But yeah, that's the extreme end of rejection sensitivity. I'm not saying everybody with ADHD will experience that. I hope no one experiences that, but unfortunately, it's become more and more common in this day and age. Yeah. So moving on from that, let's talk about how do we deal with it. And the key word is resilience. The second key word is perseverance. So resilience, as the dictionary on my computer says, is the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. So I don't really know what that means, but I think what it means is that we're able to handle the crap that life throws at us. So how do we build up this virtue of resilience? Number one, I think having a lifeline is really helpful. Something just to keep us here. October 31st, 2018 was not the first time I ever thought about suicide. Wasn't the last time either. But the first time was in 5th grade. And it was really hard to have those thoughts at that age. But luckily, about a year later, I got a dog. His name is Charlie. He was a beagle. And we were best friends for 17 years. And anytime those thoughts came back, I knew I needed to stay to take care of Charlie. The thought of what's going to happen to Charlie if I'm not here really was powerful enough to keep me here. It was enough for me to stay. Now there's staying, and then there's living life to the full. And we can get more into what that differentiation there. But what I found with my dog Charlie is he just kept me here. He showed me that I was loved. And through staying for him, I was able to really discover how to truly live. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at living, but I'm no longer just surviving. And then another lifeline that I suggest here is laughter. When my junior year of high school, I got dumped by the girl I was dating for most of the year. And I watched a ton of Everybody Loves Raymond in the wake of that experience. It kept me sane. Having a funny show to watch was just fantastic. I'm not saying you have to watch Everybody Loves Raymond, but finding something that matches your sense of humor and allows you to laugh is really powerful. And there have been scientific studies that have shown that laughter does help you. The expression laughter is the best medicine is not far from the truth. It's probably not the best medicine, but it's certainly a medicine of some kind. So if you can find a way to laugh, to forget about your troubles for a bit, that's going to be helpful. And then we need to do the things that will take care of us. Therapy is huge. It's been huge in my life. Luckily, a couple months before October 31st, 2018, I did start therapy, and that's how I knew to reach out to the mental health hospital here in town. And it's just, I'm still in therapy now because it's something that I need. And I will probably need for a while because I've got more stuff to work through, and life throws crap at you all the time. And dealing with it with someone who's not judgmental, who's there for you, is really helpful, because sometimes we don't get that in our normal everyday lives. But having someone once a week to talk to is really powerful. Cannot say enough good things about therapy. And then you can also do the typical self-care things, whatever that means to you as far as spirituality, breathing, but like just exercise, taking a walk, drinking water. Those things are going to be huge. And then lastly, community. Taking care of yourself through community is huge. That's why organizations like the Men's ADHD Support Group exist, is people need community. And it reminds us that we're not alone. We're not alone in having ADHD. We're not alone in having big emotions. We're not alone in dealing with the slings and arrows of life. So just always remember that and plug into that community. And then also we need to communicate with those closest to us, because people don't know how we feel unless we tell them. Sometimes they can guess, but if you're like me, you're pretty good at hiding your emotions. I doubt strongly that my parents knew what I wanted to do in fifth grade. They didn't know. Now, my mom had an inkling that I needed an ally, and that's why she caved and got me a dog after months and months of begging. But she definitely did not know the full extent of what was going on with me because I hid it. So, one way to build up that resilience and the perseverance to get through it all is to communicate and let people know what you're feeling. In the example of friendship, when I don't hear from a friend for a while, I start to doubt the friendship. Something as simple as saying, "Hey, haven't heard from you in a while. What's up?" You don't have to say anything judgmental. You can just come from a place of curiosity. And that's really beneficial just to talk through things. Dating relationships as well. Having that communication is key. That way, both parties know how the other one is feeling, what they desire, what they need, all those good things. And then remember, it gets better. Even if it doesn't seem like that's possible. Every time I've been down in the dumps, every time I feel like it's not going to get better, it does. And I'm the perfect example of coming out the other side. And I say that not to brag about myself and not to show myself off as like, oh, I live such a great life now. The reason I'm a good example is life is still tough sometimes. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. I legitimately have my tough days still. But because I've come through the challenges that I've had, I feel like I'm stronger. And I know that, yes, it will get better. So keep going, persevere. And I want to tell a little story about perseverance. When I first moved into my neighborhood that I'm in now, there was this old man who had a walker. And I know he had a walker because he would take his walker outside every day and go for a walk. I don't think he went very far. I never saw him far from his house, but I saw him every day when I was taking my dog for a walk. He was out there with his walker getting exercise. At first, I thought it was odd, strange. It didn't quite make sense to me. Like, if you're that challenged physically, why bother? And I kept seeing him. And eventually it dawned on me, like, that's perseverance. That's what I should be striving for. His willingness to push himself to get exercise probably prolonged his life. I don't know if he's still around anymore. I'm pretty sure the house he lived in has been sold. But just that example that I had, this was years ago, just touched me and made me realize that if he can do it, I can do it. And I hope you realize that no matter how far in the dumps I was on October 31st, 2018, I hope you're thinking, if Alex survived, I can survive too. So always remember that. And a good way to build up the resilience is also to redirect your thoughts, because it can be easy to get kind of pessimistic, right? So we can think, oh, I was rejected. But we can redirect that thought to rejection is not about me, especially in dating. So I've been on a lot of first dates, and most of them didn't lead to a second. And I used to get really upset about that. But my therapist kept telling me it's not about you. And that never sat right with me. I never believed it. But over time, I've really come to believe that because I've also been on the other side. The last 2 dates I've been on were both first dates. And in both times, I thought to myself, there's not going to be a second date. And it wasn't about the other person. They were perfectly fine. Both girls I went out with, nice human beings, but they weren't what I was looking for. And that's nothing to do with them. It's nothing wrong with them. It's just what I was looking for didn't match up with who they are. And that's okay. So having been on the other side of that allows me to look at rejection as it's not about me. I know that seems hard to make that shift, but if you keep trying to remind yourself of that, it'll get easier. And the same is true when you're disappointed in the outcome of something, both in dating and in life, because that can become an opportunity. So if we take, the dating example, being dumped, being rejected, whatever you want to call it, creates an opportunity for you to pursue something better. If there's a social event you think is going to be your new regular Tuesday night activity, and you go to it and it kind of disappoints you, take it off your calendar. Keep it open for something that's more beneficial to you, that's going to be a better opportunity for you. So we can go from being stuck in, oh, this is such a disappointment, but if we shift, we can see it as an opportunity. And another shift we can go from is from failure to a learning opportunity. It seems like a lot of us with ADHD fail a lot. And that may be true, but each failure can be seen as a learning opportunity. So if things don't go your way at a job, at a social event, whatever, it can be an opportunity for you to look at that and say, okay, how can I make this better next time? How do I go from failure to a learning opportunity? And sometimes it's not even that we failed. It's that it just didn't work out. And the learning that we can take from that is we did do everything we could. It just wasn't meant to be. There's a great quote from Star Trek: The Next Generation, one of my favorite TV shows. Captain Picard says to Data in season 2, episode 21, Peak Performance, he says, "It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life." And I thought of that as I was preparing for this talk, just because that's so true. We often think, oh, I must have done something wrong when things don't go our way. But there's always the opportunity that, or the possibility that it just wasn't meant to be for us. And that's okay. And again, that's an opportunity for something better. And then the last shift I want to throw out there is from sorrow to gratitude. Yes, we need to mourn, but gratitude can help us in the grieving process. So I talked about Charlie, my dog, earlier. He lived for 17 years, died a couple years ago. And a couple days after he died, I wrote a blog post called Gratitude in the Midst of Sorrow. And I talked about how sad I was that he was gone, because he was my best friend. I don't use that term loosely. He was everything I needed and wanted in a friend, in a companion, and losing him was hard. But I was also able in that moment to look back on the 17 years I had with him and be grateful. Not many dogs live to be 17. So yes, I was sad. Yes, I was mourning my dog. But I was so grateful to have had that time with him, that he taught me how to live, that he taught me how to stay. It was hard, but there's that gratitude. One of my, it's hard to say you have a favorite part about grieving, but when I've lost a grandparent or someone like that, there's always a moment where the family is sitting around and all of a sudden people start telling stories about the deceased. And I love that moment. I don't want to be in that moment because that means I've lost someone. But I love hearing the stories and being grateful for the humor, for the laughter, for the fond memories. So in our sorrow, in our mourning, being grateful is so important. And that's just a shift that we can make whenever we are grieving the loss of a relationship, a dream, a friendship, whatever the case may be. We can still, in those moments, find gratitude. So that's what I've got. Now I'd like to move into the question and answer time. I'm also going to put up here 2 QR codes. One is just a link to my website, the one on the left, so you can learn more about what I do. And then the other one is a link to my LinkedIn page. You can connect with me there. Also on social media at ResetADHD.com. And yeah, that's what I've got.
Excellent, brother, man. I appreciate that. You know, you said something there that really resonated with me because one of my favorite uncles, when he passed away, he was Hispanic, and it it was like a huge crowd of people just came from all over Texas and from Mexico, and like, people like I'd never met, right? But when they got there, they did the morning, they did the viewing and everything like that, and but afterwards it was just like a giant party where everyone was kind of cooking, and then whenever we were sitting down, like they made a big deal of like going around the table and asking like what's a memory you have of Uncle Sam. And it, like when you were talking about the grieving process for your dog. And by the way, dogs are family, cats are family, pets are family. So like it's perfectly fine to grieve in that situation, especially 17 years. You have my sympathy for that, brother.
Thank you.
So for everyone else, if you have a question, feel free to use your raise hand feature. We'll bring, you can turn your camera and your microphone on and everything, and then we'll have that. But I do have a couple of questions that I got from the chat and from the Facebook group that I want to ask. The first one was, I want to be open about my emotional dysregulation with my partner and how I struggle, but I'm afraid they won't understand or will think I'm too much to handle. How do I approach explaining this to them without coming off as if I'm excusing abusive behaviors?
I would say the first thing is to have the discussion when both parties are calm, because that's going to go a long ways. And then the other thing is, ADHD and our symptoms are an explanation, not an excuse. And maybe leading with that phrase, this is an explanation, not an excuse. I want to be better is a good phrase, but these are some things I struggle with. I think coming from that point of view, like, yes, it's hard for me, but I'm working on it. Showing them that it's not your desire to hurt them. However you're hurting them, that's not your desire. And coming from that place of, this isn't what I want to do. I want a healthy relationship. And the other thing that was key in the question was the word partner. You're not in it alone. An ideal relationship is a partnership. You're working together to build something great. So ask for their help. Say, hey, this is where I struggle. If you see me getting this way, could you either A, give me space, or, whatever you need in that situation? Could be space, could be just a brief redirect into something else. So how to have that conversation, do it while calm, and come from a place of explanation, not excuse. Is that an answer that you are looking for there, Shane?
I think that's a good one. I think it's a really good answer. For the rest of the crowd, if y'all got a question, feel free to raise your hand. I'm going to go ahead and continue until I see hands raised. I've got a number of them because y'all know this has been a popular subject. Neil, I've got you next after this one. This question came up in the chat. I've been considering therapy and I've been told that ADHD medications help with emotional dysregulation and rejection sensitivity, but I'm not sure what to expect. You talked about therapy, but do ADHD medications help? And if so, how?
That is a good question, a great question. Thank you for asking. Thank you for having the confidence in me that I could answer that question. But I will say, ultimately, the question of medications is going to go back to your doctor. That being said, ADHD medications do help with the symptoms of ADHD. I know there are certain ones that can help with the rejection sensitivity. I remember Dr. William Dodson talking one time about, he mentioned 2 medications. I don't remember the name of them, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. So he's got 2 medications that seem to help with rejection sensitivity, but there aren't really any medications that are officially approved for treating rejection sensitivity. I'm a proponent of at least trying medication. I know it doesn't work for everybody. I know it is sometimes too many side effects for people. So that is something to take into consideration. But ultimately, a good conversation with your doctor is the way to go there. There is potential, though, to find a medication that can help. But therapy is really where you do the work. Just from my own experience with depression and anxiety, even though I'm on a medication dosage that's working for me and doing good things, I still have my down moments. I still have those moments where I get in a funk. Sometimes they last for days. But lately, what me, my therapist, and my psychiatrist have all kind of come to realize is the down days I have are not going to be solved by medication. They're going to be solved by getting me out with people. Because I work from home, I work alone, and I don't get out much. So seeing other people is really important for me. And I don't do that enough. And so that's kind of been the focus lately of my depression and anxiety treatment, is getting out with people, seeing people, talking to people, hanging out with friends. That's ultimately going to make me happier, healthier. So talk to your doctor, but also don't reject the idea of therapy. I'm not saying it's right for you. I'm not saying it isn't, but also just, also take the holistic approach, like mind, body, spirit, but also like therapy, coaching, medication, all of the above. I'm a proponent of attacking a problem from as many fronts as necessary. So it's not just one solution. So if you're debating between therapy and medication, why not both? Some doctors will say, let's try one thing and then see how that works before we add a second thing. So it's all about your philosophy of care and what you want to do. But there is a chance medication can help with rejection sensitivity, but it's also not guaranteed. Like, there are tons of antidepressants out there because there are many different ways depression affects us, and there need to be as many treatments as there are ways that it affects us. So it's a complicated issue. Talk to your doctor and explore therapies. My advice.
That's actually really good. We did talk to Dr. Carolyn Parcells recently. I'm going to put the video in the chat. And she talked about different medications that can help. And Dr. Bill Dodson actually talked about similar ones. Guanfacine, Lamictal, and clonidine are all mood stabilizers that are used in other treatments, but have also been found to help with emotional regulation. And they are often prescribed in concert with ADHD medications. Because for some people, ADHD medications do seem to help with it, but some people may have extremes and may need that extra boost. But like Alex said, make sure you're talking to your psychiatrist about these different things and getting a good understanding. Because if you're dealing with like autism or autism outbursts and stuff like that, there's a large number of different things where therapy is the key, and building that support system of people around you. So, Neil, thank you so much for being patient. I greatly appreciate it. What's your question, boss?
Alex, first of all, great lesson for us all today. And the one thing that when you popped it up was perceived. Got me thinking as to how, because I was preparing myself about the questions or a question, and I'm used to girls say no, who cares? On to the next, right? And I know it bothers people when they get rejected. I perceive it. So I'm good at what I do for a living. I'm in sales, but don't ask me to cold call. But the worst part is I have this perceived rejection, even though I've worked with the client before, selling him equipment. I will not follow up because in my brain, I perceive I'm going to hear that no. And, you know, I need to figure out a way how to stop doing this. You know, it's like the key word for me from all of this was the word perceived. I figure I'm pretty outgoing. I figure I'm a decent guy, but I perceive it. And if I perceive it, I'll destroy it. I will somehow fuck it all up. And see, I told you, Shane doesn't like me, guaranteed, because I've done something, how do I get my brain cells to stop doing that? I'm really good at doing that. I'm good at starting it, working it, and then perceiving it's all going to fall apart. And I'll make sure it does.
Yeah. With looking for a yes or no answer, like in sales or in dating, because this is where I use it. It's if I say nothing, it's an automatic no. The only way to get a yes is to put myself out there and risk rejection. And that is so counterintuitive to the way our brains work, because our brains are trying to protect us when in those moments where we're perceiving rejection is going to happen. But the only way to know is to give it a shot. One of my favorite movies of all time is Good Will Hunting. And if you remember that movie, the main character, played by Matt Damon, goes on a date and is like, oh, this girl's perfect right now. She's smart, she's funny. And the therapist, played by Robin Williams, goes, you gonna see her again? And he goes, no, I could mess it up, or I could realize she's not as perfect as she seems. But the whole point of it is the only way you're going to know is by giving it a shot. And so when I've been nervous about asking a girl out, I pull up that clip on YouTube and just watch that. So take Sean McGuire's words for it. The only way you're going to know is by giving it a shot. And that sounds so simple, but take a page from Sean McGuire's book. Take the chance. It seems simple to just say that, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a muscle. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I can sell the deals every once in a while. I just don't want to follow it up because I don't want to hear the no.
Yeah.
And that's, I do that in a lot of areas of my life.
Mm.
I guess I call it, what we do is I ended up sabotaging,
Mm.
for no apparent reason, only because I perceived it myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. It's that get rid of that, pull that perception away, because it's like worry. You can, sitting in it's like a rocking chair and you go nowhere with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it will occupy a shitload of my time and waste it.
Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately you have to just come to the realization that's not how you want to live. You kind of have to make the decision
Yeah.
and then make the decision over and over again until you get where you want to go.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, man.
So if I can add something to this, because a giant brain nerd here, one of the things that really helped me whenever I first started trying to figure these things out was acceptance. Now, whenever I started having this epiphany and realization when I was 28, I had no clue I had ADHD. I just knew I was weird and odd. And I just said, you know what? Fine, I'll just be that dude. And I just accepted that aspect of me for who I was. But ironically enough, when I started learning about ADHD and when I actually started doing my hyper focus into it, I found out two very interesting things. One, ADHD affects our reticular activating system in our brain, which is how we perceive the world. It's how we view the world. It's how we experience it. It's how we hear. It's from the words that are said around us. All of these things are different for us because ADHD affects that part of our brain. It also deals with a trauma response. Because ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, we deal with it from our 0 to 12, where we deal with a lot of people vilifying failure, right? And everything that we want to do, have fun doing, try to do, every time we make a mistake, we keep being told how we're failures. And the people around us, and especially the cultures that we grow up in, keep harping about this concept of failure being a bad thing. Failure and rejection share a lot in common. If I fail, my parents reject me. If I fail, my teacher rejects me. If I fail, my friends reject me. They make fun of me. They joke about me. And so we develop a trauma response. And because of the way our brains work and how we view and perceive the world, we develop trauma at a higher rate than other people. And this all kind of stacks on us. And we keep putting these little stones in these backpacks that we're carrying to the point that when we get older, our imposter syndrome is so significant that it causes us to essentially live a fulfilling prophecy. I'm going to get rejected. I might as well not try. I'm going to get rejected, so I might as well just fuck it up and be the person who does the pain instead of being hurt. Sometimes we hurt people because we're afraid of being hurt. And those two things, when I learned about those things, that was the key for me to really start taking control, like what Alex was saying, and making a conscious decision to not let that imposter syndrome win. We already love bucking systems, right? As people with ADHD, we already buck the systems. We don't like bosses who are assholes. We don't like dealing with authoritarian book BS and everything like that. We just need to kind of Alex, what was the words that you said?
Redirect.
Redirect. Thank you. Yes. We just have to redirect our mind to recognize that that's not us speaking and telling us that failure is such a bad thing. It's all the people who have lied to us throughout the history of our lives. My alarm's about to go off. Hold on a second. This is how we do external tools for remembering to do things, everyone. All right. So any other questions or anything like that? Neil, by the way, that was an excellent question. I greatly appreciate it.
Same.
Yeah. All right. If y'all don't have questions, I'm going to ask one from the chat again. So this one's actually really relevant, actually. Sometimes I feel like I'm on top of the world, like I can take on anything. But then a really small thing sets me off, like a coworker making a criticism, and I'll plummet into this pit of despair and self-loathing. These mood swings are exhausting. How do you find emotional stability when it feels like you're constantly on a roller coaster?
It'll take time. So it's not going to happen overnight. Because when we get into a pattern like that, it wants to continue. So there are many like different ways of approaching that situation of a coworker giving a criticism. You can picture, this is a metaphor that was given to me in my coach training. You picture a tennis court and picture that coworker lobbing like a ball of dirt at you. And you take your racket and you whack it back to the other side. That's not for me. That's a visual you can use. But you also have to, sometimes it helps to get in the position of the other person. Why are they making that criticism? Is it really about you? Because sometimes maybe they had an argument with their spouse that morning. Maybe they got pulled over on the way to work and got a speeding ticket. You never know what they're going through. Coming at it from that perspective makes you say, okay, maybe they're just mad at somebody else. But sometimes it can be true. So you have to ask yourself questions like, okay, is what they're saying true? And yeah, maybe they're jealous. Lol. Maybe they could be jealous. So, I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities there, and you don't know. So what you need to do is just trust yourself that A, if you make a mistake, that you can bounce back, or B, that maybe I'm not the one making the mistake. So you have to kind of balance those two things out. It's not easy to say, okay, I'm not gonna let that get to me. So I get that. But it is possible to get to a mindset of, I'm not gonna let that bother me. Because if we look at it objectively, get space from the situation, look at it objectively. Is that true? If it's not true, then you can reject it, throw it away. It's not apparent to you. Or you can look at it and say, okay, this is a learning opportunity for me. How can I be better next time? So again, it's that whole redirect mindset shift between the negative reaction and the positive reaction. So I totally get the mood swing thing. It's crazy hard. Happened to me a lot in high school before I was diagnosed. I would get something simple would set me off and it would just plummet my mood for the day. But over time, I've gotten better at just kind of letting things go. Are there still things that kind of grind my gears and will upset me for an entire day? Yeah. But I'm getting better at it. It's a process to work through that. And again, having an objective, non-judgmental person you can talk through those issues with is really beneficial.
Yeah, that was one of the things therapy really helped me with, was helping me discover trauma triggers, right? Because sometimes those are trauma responses when we hear a phrase that maybe our mom or our dad or our teacher used against us, and then all of a sudden this coworker uses the same phrase and triggers a trauma response. That was one of my biggest issues, was that. And then what you said is 100%. Like, they're just, maybe somebody's having a bad day, or this wasn't meant in a mean way, but I'm perceiving it. Kind of going back to what Neil said, I'm perceiving it in a negative way. Is there something I can learn from it? I love that. That was a really, really, really good one. we got a follow-up question from one that was asked earlier about the partners
Okay.
and the struggles. When you're having that conversation, what kind of support can you ask for from those around you? Because you kind of talked about like, let me walk away or things of that nature. What are some other things that we should be asking from our family members or our partners to help us with our emotional regulation and the feelings of rejection?
Yeah, that's a really good question because first of all, it's going to vary from person to person what you specifically need. But other things you can ask for, sometimes it's just a reminder to breathe. Sometimes it's a code word, and just hearing that code word will make you go, oh, okay, I'm getting dysregulated right now. Time to slow down. I'm trying to think of other examples. Sometimes it's a simple touch on the shoulder is enough to get you to, oh, okay. So having those signals, those alerts that are going to get you to recognize what's happening, that's going to be key. Trying to think of other ones. Do you have any suggestions, Shane?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it whenever you were talking about having the conversation before, like have the conversation about emotional dysregulation before, but also like part of that conversation can be if I pop off on you, or if I get angry, or if I seem to have like this snap moment, right? Because that emotional dysregulation sometimes, like you don't have time for like, for a signal or anything like that because it's a trauma response. If there is a situation that happens like that where you do have the reaction, like learn that it's okay to talk about that beforehand and to let them know that that could happen. And if that happens, that they need to just let things happen and walk away and get away from the situation for their safety if that's a issue that you deal with. I mean, I'm going to touch on something that's very sensitive to me and something that I deal with a lot of shame about. With my first wife, she was abusive and knew how to push the buttons and did that intentionally to make me the bad guy. And there's plenty of times whenever I was working 100 hours a week and I would come home and she still expected me to do dishes and not play video games or not have any downtime or subsist on less than 6 hours of sleep. And I would get to certain points where put my fist through a wall or something. Right now, luckily I didn't have one of those moments where I like hit her. But there's plenty of times when my kids hit me in a certain way where I was frustrated and I took it out on them. And I feel a lot of shame and guilt for that because they didn't deserve it. But I learned from that. And when I had those conversations with my wife, it was very much more along the lines of, if I start acting a certain way, if I start having this really strong emotional reaction to something, if it's too late, in advance, I'm sorry, but just walk away, let me breathe, let me do whatever it is I'm going to do. If I throw a fucking tantrum or whatever it is. And then afterwards, and I've processed through the shame and guilt that we feel, I've learned from therapy to go and say, I'm sorry and mean it. And that's the thing, and mean it. But then the other side of that coin, this is where journaling come into play. And yes, I know that's a bad word. I'm sorry. I journal about it and take it to my therapist. I don't journal to get stuff out. I journal because it gives me something directed to give to my therapist. But there was a trigger somewhere in there that I really need to explore and figure out what's going on. Am I really stressed out? Am I dealing with a lack of sleep? Was I hangry? Right? Did I just not eat for an entire day or two? That's the thing that can happen. And knowing those things can then empower us to then move forward and not do those things going further, hopefully. Will we have bad days? Like you said, Alex, earlier? Yes. Right? Are we going to do it? Yes. But if we have those conversations beforehand, it then kind of takes it home if we do have a situation like that happens. And then they hopefully are the people around us will go, all right, so when I have a criticism about things like this, I maybe need to reword this differently or have a different kind of conversation or, have a conversation about, hey, if I feel like you're not doing enough around around the house, like how can we have that conversation so it doesn't trigger the living snot out of you? Because I tried to tell you about not doing the dishes, but you lost your shit. And those are difficult conversations, and there's nothing easy about that at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to have the courage to have those conversations,
Yeah.
both before and after the event. And then interventions need to happen as soon as possible. Because like you said, sometimes it just gets to a point where you can't do anything. It's going to happen. So, yeah.
Alex, thank you so much.
Thanks
This
for
has been
having me.
amazing. I really appreciate this. Just real quick, where can people find you and talk to us about what you do? And then, we're going to call it for the night.
Okay, yeah. You can find me at ResetADHD.com or at ResetADHD on most social media networks. I can't think of one I'm not on. But yeah, ResetADHD is my business. So I offer a very wide variety of support for people with ADHD. I've got my one-on-one coaching. I've got online courses, got one on sleep, one on prayer, and I'm working on a third course. And then got online communities you can join, got downloadables on my courses.resetadhd.com website, including one that is 10 tips for emotional regulation. And that's a freebie download. You can go to courses.resetadhd.com to download that. And then once a month, I do offer an improv workshop for people with ADHD. That's on the second Thursday of the month. Yeah. And if there's anything else I don't offer that you think I should offer, let me know. ResetADHD.com. There's a contact page. And yeah, thanks for joining us. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to get to support this great organization.
Greatly appreciate it, brother. You have a great day, okay? Thank
You
you,
too.
everyone.